Okay, I have your formative assessments with me. I haven't recorded all the grades, so I'm not going to I'll let you visit with them at the end of class. I'm not going to be able to let you take them back because I'm still thinking about the assessment numbers I'm going to assign to them. This question, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but had I a chance to do it over, I would probably have written it a bit differently. There was nothing in there that you should not have been able to handle. It really was, you want to let Mr. Garcia in the back. There really is nothing in there that's new. Except for, and as I warned you in advance, a couple principles of Louisiana law. One should have been revocable versus irrevocable offers. Another should have been, and this you were hit in the face with in contracts, a formative assessment. And that is the concept of acceptance. Acceptance by three methods, right? Promise, performance, and silence. But the Louisiana Civil Code, as I mentioned to you, has some specifics in it, and you should have mentioned those. The specifics are, first of all, that you need to notify the offeror when you commence performance unless he's otherwise going to know about it. The other is that if it's a kind of obligation that will be finished once started, once performance starts, that irrevocable offer becomes an option. Okay, and even if it wasn't an irrevocable offer, once you start it, whether or not it's going to be completed once started, it becomes an irrevocable offer once started. Those three principles are in Articles 1939 through 1941. 1939 through 1941. A number of you forgot even to analyze acceptance according to those three principles. Yes?
So once it starts, it becomes an option?
If it's a kind of obligation that will be completed once started, then it becomes an option. Otherwise, it becomes an irrevocable offer, whether or not it was one to begin with. The most important thing is the notification part. Okay, so most of you missed a lot of this. And it's not because I think that you didn't know it. It's because you're not yet sure of how to attack these kinds of problems. So let's take a look and see. I'm calling this a post-mortem. Okay. But you're not dead yet. Okay. So the first thing, as we talked about before, is that you want to mark up the hypothet. You want to mark up the hypothet. Now, I sent to you on Twin a more fully marked up hypothet with comments on the side. So that's a little more helpful. But at this point, what I want you to focus on is the call of the question. And this is what you should always do when taking an exam that's hypothet based, an essay exam. So you can even jump to that and read that first, because what this shows is how the examiner wants you to organize the question. That is the most important thing, how to organize your answer to that question. If you don't organize it according to the way the examiner wants it, you're likely to have problems, because what they're trying to do in setting it up that way is to give you a clue as to the best way to tackle it. Okay? Roof sues for breach of contract. Are they likely to win? That's the first question. Okay? So you know you have to talk about contract at some point, and they're suing for breach. Well, what's the point of talking about breach of contract if you don't talk about contract? So that's a clue that you need to define. What's the first legal term? Contract. Why or why not? Be sure to address what kind of offer was made, to whom, and whether it was properly accepted. So they want you to talk about offer, and they want you to talk about acceptance. So first you're going to talk about contract, then you're going to talk about offer, then you're going to talk about acceptance. When you get into trouble is when you mix those things together. You come out with hash. If you're talking about offer, you are only talking about offer. Okay? If you're talking about acceptance, you are only talking about acceptance. Here, you may want to analogize this case to another case you studied. That could be a third thing, or it could be something you have to fold in. But when you talk about an analogy, it's in context of explaining your rule. Okay? And I gave you a hint before the formative assessment went out that you should be talking about the Evertight case. So hopefully you would have reviewed it. Okay, so now we've read the hypothet, right? You know you have to talk about contract, so you've ruled out your background, you've ruled out capacity, no real issues, you've ruled out the cause. On one party it's to reduce noise, on the other party it's to get money. The object is, on the one party it's roofing, and on the other party it's to get money. Now I used plaintiff and defendant here, but in fact it's always much easier if you use the parties' names. Then you won't get confused and your professor won't get confused. There is no, has there been a lawsuit filed yet? No, they're just yelling about things. So if there's no lawsuit filed yet, you don't really have a plaintiff and defendant. So call them by their names. There's only one or two of you who didn't. When you do the T-bar, one of the things that you guys, the majority of you got into trouble with was you didn't put those details in. I asked specifically for Louisiana edition. So this is like a repeat of the formative assessment you did in contracts, but with the addition of Louisiana concepts. And very few of you actually added those Louisiana concepts into your T-bar. If they're not on your T-bar, are you likely to write about them? No. So you want to put all the rule details in your T-bar. If you know you've forgotten something, then leave a space and put a question mark. Let your brain warm up. So here, rules, offer. If you're in the evening division, I do expect you to memorize those definitions. I'm going to make you write them out 3 times on Monday. Okay. So memorize offer, memorize contract, verbatim. And when it comes to offer, the 3 elements, it's not communication. We communicate an advertisement to everybody. So that's not an accurate element that's going to help you distinguish between an offer and an invitation to negotiate. It has to be a communication that's addressed to a specific person. Okay? Specific person is the first one. It's addressed to Beausoleil. And what was the nature of this thing? It was not a contract that was offered. If we use that word, we're going to get ourselves confused. Don't ever use the word contract until you've proven that there is one. How do I know there is one? Well, it's enforceable and you get a remedy for it. Okay, so what words can you use beforehand before you know whether it's enforceable or not? Agreement, maybe, if they've agreed, or in this case, it was probably a form, wasn't it? Because they're a roofer, they probably have what they think of as a form contract. So they filled it out with the details of what roofing, $10,000, and handed it to Beausoleil. So they they communicated it to a specific person, right? It had a specific price, terms. It probably had the asphalt on it. If you want to say that, you can say, assuming it had all the terms of the roofing, because it makes a big difference whether they want green, brown, blue, red, what color roofing they want, what quality. Manifested intent to be bound. On this form, does RR, Rufus Roofing, manifest an intent to be bound if Beausoleil just says yes? No, they do not. They say this isn't binding until we sign it or we commence performance. So it's on the form, but it's presumed they would merely say yes, but you need there's a signature and what? Signature or commencement of performance. So you need to have noticed that. So if you actually analyze this carefully, step by step, only one legal concept at a time, you can get there. If you try to reach the end, I got to get to the conclusion. I got to get there now. I got to get there before I start. I mean, that is thinking like an undergraduate, and that's not going to get you anywhere. This is complex stuff, one step at a time. If you do it one step at a time, one legal concept at a time, one legal element at a time, you will get there, and you'll get there correctly. Okay. So this becomes a role reversal. The offer mandates that there is no contract until the offeror accepts. So that makes the offeree now the original offeror, right? Okay, it switches it. Just like in Evertight. In Evertight, the clause was almost exactly the same. We talked about that. So in Evertight, the roofer who provided the form becomes the offeree. Same as here. Oh, God, I'd shoot myself, right? Okay. And then it's revocable within 10 days. Some of you spotted, hey, revocable by whom within 10 days? Well, I guess that would mean that Beausoleil would have 10 days to back out of it. Okay, yes. But regardless, even if it applies to the Rufus, they didn't do that, right? They did nothing within 10 days. So most of you spotted, if it's an irrevocable offer and it's not accepted within the stipulated period, that offer is what? According to the Civil Code, automatically revoked. Okay. Then you do the same thing for acceptance. On acceptance, you need a manifestation of assent to the terms of the contract. Now, careful here. Some of you don't understand counteroffer yet. So it has to be the mirror image. It has to be exactly the same. And that's not exactly true. Under the mirror image rule, if the offeree adds something and makes their acceptance contingent on that addition, now it becomes a counteroffer. If, on the other hand, they add something but it's merely a request, like, yes, I'll pay $10,000 for the snake, but could you throw in the rhinestone collar? That's a request. That is not a counteroffer. Okay? That's an acceptance coupled with a request. And it's perfectly fine. It's that question of contingency. So watch the mirror image rule. Get what the whole question with regard to law is being precise, understanding the rules precisely, getting all the details. So terms of the contract in the manner invited. So what manner was invited? A return promise, right? That's that signature, or commencement. And with something about they loaded up the truck. And then option contract, more is needed. Well, what did Beausoleil say? They added something in there about let us know. Well, isn't there notice needed under the Civil Code? Oh, yeah, that's where that fact comes in. Generally, when you're analyzing a hypothet this way, you want to use as many of the facts that were thrown into that hypothet as you can. There will sometimes be some useless and unnecessary facts. In this one, it's Beausoleil is a Louisiana band that plays traditional Cajun, Creole, and Zydeco, but adds a new twist. That's true. But it's irrelevant for our purposes. Their song Gris Gris is probably their best known. Also true, again, irrelevant for our purposes. You can hear their music in a number of New Orleans-based movies. Also true. Okay. Also irrelevant. Everything after that, though, you can use is useful. Okay, so 30 days within the term or within reasonable time. 30 days was not reasonable. Yes, ma'am.
The last thing that you said was him saying about them, let us know.
Let us know.
What's the significance of that statement again?
They're demanding notice of when performance commences.
So it adds.
It should clue you in. Oh, that's right. Louisiana law requires notice. Okay? Louisiana law requires notice. Okay? I don't know that anybody caught that. They figured, well, I'll just use the same rules I used last time. Right. No, we're moving forward, guys. We're always moving forward. I'm adding a little bit more, okay? Each time. Let's see. What are we going to surprise us with? There we go. Okay. Flying letters. Okay. Okay, issue statements. The important part is given up in the top left of your screen. It should incorporate the call of the question. Why should your overarching issue incorporate the call of the question? What is the point doing that? So you know what your answer is. So you know you're headed in the direction that the examiner wants you to head in. Is it easy to get off target? Yes, it definitely is. There was at least one occasion when a professor asked me to research X. Well, I couldn't find X, so I gave him a very nicely detailed memorandum on Y. Guess, X, Y, Z on Y. Guess what his response was? He threw it in my face and said, "This is useless. Go research X, not Y." Okay. Answer what they want you to answer, not anything else. It's easy to get off track. If you incorporate the call of the question, you're essentially grabbing the professor by the necktie and say, "See, you want me to do this, I am doing this. I'm not doing anything else." So it helps keep you on track, and it shows to the professor that you know, the examiner, that you know what they want. You're also going to incorporate one legal concept. Okay? So the call of the question, one legal concept. If the call of the question mentioned a legal concept, that would be the one that you would list in your call of the question. And then one or two facts. And then one or two facts. One or two facts, something about the names of the parties is enough. Okay? Did Beausoleil and RR agree to a contract, and if so, was it breached such that R can sue for breach of contract? Okay? That would be a call of the question that includes legal concepts and includes one or two facts. So here is an example of one way of writing the overarching background rule. And then the other two rules follow. Now, at the top, it says RILR for subsequent issues. What is RILR for? Anybody know? Review, introduce, legal relationship. Part of writing a good exam is proving to the examiner that you know how one concept relates to the next. This is also good writing, and a review, introduce, legal relationship is essentially a topic sentence, so you're taking the reader with you. So it's accomplishing two things. It's connecting, making connections in your papers. It's one of the most powerful transition tools in your vocabulary. And it's proving to your examiner that you know how these concepts relate to each other. So if we go to the second one, offer, this would be for the second issue, which is, well, the real issue is offer and then acceptance. Even if the other elements are established, that would be the one in the overarching paragraph, background paragraph. There can be no contract between B and RR if there was no consent. Consent is formed when an offer meets with an acceptance. An offer is. Okay. Does that review what came first? Yeah, those other elements. It introduces offer and explains how the two are related. Depending how you're writing, some of these things may come through earlier. Now, if you look at this, what you'll see is one other thing. How many times is the word offer repeated? A lot, right? Even if the other elements, no contract if there is no consent. Consent is formed when offer, and offer is. That's the definition. That's called linking. Okay, that's called linking. And you do that pretty naturally. You do that pretty naturally when you write legal analysis. That comes naturally. It keeps the reader with you. You don't need to worry about other kinds of transitions. if you've got linking working for you, because each sentence is connected to the previous one. So review, introduce legal relationship when you're going from one IRAC to another, okay? We have 2 T-bars, right? One for offer, one for acceptance. How many IRACs do we have? 2. 2. 1 IRAC for each T-bar. 1 T-bar for each single issue in the hypothet, okay? The first one on contract is just background. There's no real legal issue there. You're just explaining what a contract is. You're not analyzing whether the parties have everything, okay? Okay, so here are some not so good issue statements. The issue is whether B's signature on an estimate from RR and his statement, whatever, blah, 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 obligates B to an irrevocable offer, blah, 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 and whether R will prevail in a cause of action against B for breach of contract because B chose another roofer. Okay, what's wrong with that one? Why is that one not so good? It's rambling. What was this person trying to do? I understand what they were trying to do, and I think it's important to know the difference. What were they trying to do? Trying to reach a conclusion. Right. I think they were also trying to write an issue statement like you would do in an office memorandum. Okay, where you try to cram as much as you can into your issue and turn it into a question. And even there, you want to keep it as simple as possible and easy to follow, okay? So you want your sentences to be simple. You want your issues to be simple. You're talking about complex ideas, so simple sentences will convey that better. The first element to analyze is the offer of the contract. What's wrong with that? Right, you're already presuming there's a contract before you've even established that there is one, okay? The first issue is whether defendant's irrevocable offer was valid. Right, right. Don't even know what an irrevocable offer is yet. Okay. According to the Louisiana Civil Code, in order for parties to contract, they must first meet 4 elements. Do parties meet elements? No, no. In order for a contract to exist, one must establish 4 elements, right? 4 elements must be established. But is that an issue? What is that? It's a rule. It's part of a rule. Okay. Okay, so issue clearer, issue statements clearer, incorporate the call of the question, a legal concept, and 1 or 2 facts. It can be as simple as the parties' names, okay? Okay, background law or raise and dismiss. This is something that you don't always have to do. As a matter of fact, I would say it's fairly uncommon where an examiner is going to ask for background law. How did this question indicate that background law was necessary? It said, do they have a contract? Well, the whole topic of this course is contracts, right? So they're asking for a little bit of background. So you want to get rid of that fairly quickly. Okay? Very much more commonly, a call of the question is just going to say, please jump to this particular legal issue one way or another. And you sort of refer back. But this one said contract up front. So how would we give that background law? Okay. Here is one example that was not so good. The 4 elements of a contract are cause, object, capacity, and consent. There was one that even put in consideration. Oops. The object is the roof, and the same as the cause. Both parties have capacity. Consequently, the only issue is consent. Okay. It covers the 3 elements, doesn't it? Okay. How would you make it stronger? Right. Why would you want to explain a little bit more? Why would you want to explain a little bit more? Why would you want to explain a little bit more? Right, prove you know what you're talking about, demonstrate your knowledge. The whole point of an exam is to demonstrate your knowledge, okay? So this doesn't really do that as well as this. This one's probably a little too long, but it does do that effectively. A contract is an agreement by two or more parties whereby obligations are created, modified, or extinguished. It is also a promise or set of promises for the breach of which the law provides a remedy or the performance of which the law in some way recognizes as a duty. Is there any difference in a contract under Louisiana law and a contract under common law in terms of the definition? That definition about breach, that's exactly the same. That applies. Do we make promises in Louisiana that are unenforceable? That are not enforceable as contracts? All the time. All the time. So the difference between that and one that's enforceable as a contract is that you can get a remedy for it. So those two work together. Some of you distinguish one is from Louisiana, one is from common law, sort of indicated you were uncomfortable with having to put what you saw as common law definition into a civil law topic. But you need not be, because they both apply. Okay? Louisiana requires 4 elements. Capacity, notice they're numbered. Number them so that you can make it a little easier for the reader to follow, and you can make it easier for yourself to write that way. You can make sure I raised 1, 2, 3, 4, and I applied 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The parties must have capacity, a lawful cause or causes, object must be lawful, possible, determined, and determinable, and mutual consent. Why did I put consent last? That's the problem, right? You know you're going to have to talk more about it. So the one that you're going to have to talk more about, it's easiest to put it last, okay? Because you want to get rid of the others. People are presumed to have legal capacity except for minors, interdicts those deprived of reason, none of which exceptions seem to apply to either party. Do I have a little bit of analysis there? Does it prove that I know what the exceptions to capacity are? Does it prove that I know what the presumption is? Yeah. Therefore, they're presumed to be capable. The object of the contract, a roof replacement, is determined and lawful. B's cause is to have a quiet place in which to record their music, and R's cause is the payment for the roofing work, both of which are lawful. Consequently, the only issue is whether the parties consented to contract. This is actually from one of your all's tests. Okay? This was very nicely written. Could possibly have been a little more, a little shorter, a little more concise, but it's very effective. Okay. There go the curtains. Okay. Now that we've done the background, now we're getting to the nitty-gritty, the first issue, which is offer. Okay. So when you start talking about IRAC, after you state the issue, what comes next? Rule. Yeah, rule. Now, depending on the subject your exam is on, rules are going to be stated in different ways. If it's something like criminal law, it's going to be quick and dirty, right? You need these 4 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4 established. Bing, done. Or you can combine them. First element is intent. Second element is an intentional touching. Whatever for assault. That can easily be done in 1 or 2 sentences. But where it's something a little bit bigger, a little bit more complex here, you need to explain the law, and you want to include all those details that you're going to have to apply later. But you don't want to don't even mention the facts of the case in your rules section. What you want to do is focus on explaining this law to somebody who is very smart but doesn't necessarily know it, like your mom. Okay? Explain it as if you would to your mom with all the details, and you want to put them in a logical order. Okay, so here's one. An offer is a manifestation of intent to enter into a contract. Okay, made so as to justify another person in understanding his assent is invited and will conclude the bargain. That is the restatement, section 24. Memorize it if you haven't yet, because you'll be tested on it on Monday, evening division especially. As such, it has 3 characteristics. It's addressed to a specific person, contains sufficient terms that a court could enforce the resulting contract, and the offeror has objectively manifested an intent to be bound such that the offeree understands that he, the offeror, intends to be bound if the offeree merely says yes. Again, maybe a little more wordy than it needs to be, but it's there. Louisiana has two kinds of offers, revocable and irrevocable. An irrevocable offer is one where the offeror manifests an intent to keep the offer open, either for a specified period of time or some reasonable period of time. An offer that's not irrevocable is revocable at the offeror's will, just as at common law. Okay, come on back. There. Okay, so what did that do? It defined it, explained the definition, right? And then it went into the Louisiana specifics. That's all it did. Okay? By explaining the definition, those are those elements. Here, you can compare it to what I got on a number of papers. I call this an IRAC offer, okay? Because what happens is the person gives one little rule and then analysis, then another little rule and then some more analysis. So what happens is the reader cannot follow it. That's one problem. So as an examiner, I have to trace very carefully to see whether you got all of it. It's annoying, okay? The second problem is that you're most likely yourself going to get lost and not include something you need to have included. Okay? A rah is ineffective because you can't see the whole. All you're going to see are little pieces, parts, and you're not seeing how they fit together. It also, as you can see, gets very long. To establish a true offer, several elements. First, must communicate their offer to the offeree. That's okay. That encompasses addressed to a particular person. In this hypo, do we need this? In this hypo, do we need that? No, because we know what we're talking about. B communicated his offer. We're presuming it's an offer in writing via R's proposal. What? Thus, B, the offeror met the element of communication. What? Okay, are you confused? I'm already confused. Okay? This person understood there was a role reversal, but it did not understand how that worked and sort of got it backwards, okay? And it's very, very difficult to follow. Got it? Do you see that? Do y'all see that? Please. Everybody looks, okay. Do I need to stop this? Okay. I just want to make sure. So, in your rules section, you're going to talk about the rules and nothing but the rules, right? So help me. Right, okay. Okay, here's where analysis gets much easier. Is this about as long as that IRAC thing was? Yeah, it's about the same length, but each part is much shorter. Offer, two kinds. See, this is shorter. This is tighter, and then here in this instance, RR presented B with a form containing a price for roofing. Thus, it seems RR is addressing a particular person. B, the form contains sufficient terms so the court can enforce the resulting contract, re-roofing for $10K. Okay, is that short and sweet? Does the reader get it? You guys are scaring me. Do you see how that's analysis? I'm pretty much repeating everything I did for rule and putting in there analysis. You can do analysis with the word because. I'm doing it in a shorter way here with parentheses, right? Okay. B seemingly understands that if he says yes, i.e. signs the form, RR intends to be bound. However, the language of the contract specifically stipulates that if B signs the contract, RR will not be bound until the president signs the contract or RR begins to perform. Okay? Thus, with this language, B becomes the offeror and RR the offeree, as in the Effortide case where the roofing company's contract had a similar clause. There's another twist, however. The form adds additional language saying it will be good for 10 days, turning this into an irrevocable offer that is good for a specified period of time. If you write your rule sections this way, if you write them solidly, when it comes to analysis, it becomes much easier because you just follow the rules section step by step. If you're trying to figure it all out while you're doing your T-bars and just forget stuff, then you're going to forget stuff. Okay? So one step at a time, and one of the best ways to prepare for exams is to write out draft rule sections and then test yourself with pretend hypotheticals that you come up with on your own. You may only have to write one of these to get the hang of it. Writing the rule sections out helps you teach yourself all the rule details. If you can't write it out, if you can't write out an explanation of a certain concept, then you've just proven to yourself that you don't understand it yet. Okay? And you need to study a little bit more. And I don't mean go back and look at the same materials. I mean look for a case that talks about this concept and see how that case explained it. Or look it up in the treatise, or look it up in a law review article, or contact a TA or Professor Netzel. Okay? There are a number of ways to do this, but if you practice rule sections first and then do a couple of analysis sections, you'll see how this flows much more easily than rule R-A. Oh, I've got pieces, parts, and nothing fits together. Okay? Yes?
So how would you avoid the rah-rah thing if you have several different issues in the hypothetical? Okay, you're going to
Each issue,
contract, the rule,
yeah,
the
each
offer
issue is a
separate.
separate IRAC.
So you don't want to put all the rules at the very top.
No, that's called a rule dump.
Oh, okay.
Okay? That's called a rule dump. And the problem with a rule dump is the same thing as rah. You forgot what you said earlier. Okay? Okay. So one rule section for offer, one rule section for acceptance. Okay, one rule section for consideration. Okay.
So we're going to do the offer, you're going to do the issue, put the rule down, analyze, conclude, then acceptance, and continue on.
Right. Right.
Light bulb just went on.
Yay! A light bulb just went on. Okay.
I'm a 2L, by the way, and I've already taken this class.
I know. I was happy to see you, but also a little, oh my goodness.
Stumbling along.
No, but this is not something you get the first time.
No.
It's not something you get the second time. Maybe you do. It might be the 5th, 6th, 10th. Doesn't matter what time it is as long as you get it. Because IRAC is something that you're going to be using for the rest of your life if you practice law. It's a way of thinking, not just a way of writing. So if you're not thinking in IRAC, you're not thinking about law properly. You're not thinking like a lawyer. Okay? So one IRAC per issue. Okay, so here's an acceptance IRAC, all put together. Okay? It's all put together. So first is and my TAs colored it nicely in, I'm going to have to get on them. They used LSU colors and not Southern colors. Okay. +1, right? That's green. Oh, maybe it's Mardi Gras colors. Okay, I guess it's Mardi Gras colors. That would be acceptable. Okay, because B made an offer, the final issue in determining whether B was obligated to RR is whether RR properly accepted that offer. Why is that a good issue statement? Where are you going? It connects all that came before and tells the reader where we're going. It reviews, it introduces, and explains the legal relationship, RILR. Okay. Is it long? No. Does it have a fact in there? Where's the fact? B. Mentions B, right? Beausoleil. Is it a problem that it starts with the word because? No, your 3rd grade English teacher was wrong. You can start a sentence with because. You can start a paragraph with because. Actually, I prefer because over since, because since means time. It's not as clear. If we use the word because, we're talking causation. Period. Nothing else. Okay. Next is the rule about acceptance. A manifestation of assent to the terms of the offer made in the manner requested or invited by the offer. That's pretty much straight from the restatement as well. Okay? As a master of his offer, an offeror may require acceptance in the form of a return promise, a performance, or occasionally silence. Do we need to go into detail about acceptance by silence here? No, because it's not at issue. Do we have to go into detail about acceptance by return promise or acceptance by performance? Both of them, because they were both raised in the offer, which said what? Signature or commencement of performance. Okay. I thought you guys learned this in contracts because that was the second issue in your formative assessment in contracts, right? How many times do we talk about that? Okay. So this is the same thing, but a little extra, a little, as we would say in Louisiana, lagniappe. Lagniappe is the 13th donut in the dozen, right? Okay. It used to be more of a tradition in New Orleans than it is now. Louisiana, if an offeree begins its performance, and it's such that it's assumed he'll complete that performance what's begun, it's an option. If, on the other hand, it's assumed, it's not assumed performance will be completed, then the offer becomes irrevocable for a reasonable time. Did I forget to put notice? Yeah. Yep, up there. If acceptance by performance is invited, then the offeree has an obligation to notify the offeror once performance has begun. And that's both common law and civil law. Okay. How would you know that I have to? How would I know that I have to pay you? I didn't have access to that apartment. You just went in and renovated it, and now you want your money. Why didn't you let me know you were starting? I didn't know you even wanted the contract. Okay. Again, fairly short rule. In this situation, the offer specifies it's irrevocable for 10 days. RR waited 30 days before attempting to accept by performance. By its own terms, the offer had expired by that time and therefore was unreasonable for RR to try to accept it. Furthermore, okay, that could be done. I mean, that sort of disposes of the issue, but what is the point of these exercises? Demonstrate your knowledge. So, furthermore, the offer gave a choice of acceptance by promise, i.e. signature, or performance. In Evertight, here comes the analogy. The court held that acceptance by performance was effective because the homeowner had not revoked the offer and the roofing company had not only loaded the truck, but they'd also driven several hours down. So it wasn't like they just threw a few tools and a little bit of roofing stuff into the back of the truck and said, Evertight. No, in Evertight, they really did a lot to commence performance. Okay? So while it might have been presumed that RR would finish, notice I didn't have to pick, be finished once roof started. RR didn't either sign or notify that it was commencing by performance, and thus not only was there no acceptance and hence no contract. Here's one more twist, one more little addition to Louisiana law if you read the articles carefully. If you don't notify that you're commencing performance, you might even have to pay damages. Ooh, yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the rule about beginning performance and how that makes the offer an option?
Okay. Well, if it's a kind of what the Civil Code says in Article 1939 is actually when an offeror invites performance by acceptance and according to usage or the nature or the terms of the contract, it's contemplated that the performance will be completed if commenced. A contract is formed when he begins the performance. Okay? So what kind of contract would that be? No. You could look at it as an option, but it's a contract, so you can be sued for breach if you don't pay on it. So let's say it's something simple to perform that would be completed once started. Can anybody think of something right off the top of their heads? Delivery. Maybe deliver the TV set, right? It's on the truck. Okay. So a contract is formed. It's now your TV. It's on the truck. Okay. Whereas with this roofing thing, well, probably once you've loaded the truck up with all of those red roofing asphalt things the shingles that you had to order, special order, because this idiot wants a red roof out of asphalt, not tile. And you drove and you put in all of the tar. You got your little tar thing towing behind it, heating up the tar. And you've got the 6 laborers who are going to go up there in the truck. And you've got all the shovels and everything else and the ladders. And you drive 3 hours. Do you think performance has commenced and they're likely to finish it? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it was, again, what it says is according to the nature and circumstances of the contract. Got to remember also that the homeowner had signed the form, right, saying we accept it. So they should be expecting to see them within a reasonable time, and they did. Wasn't it a couple of days? Yeah. Though in the hypothetical we just came up with, if they had to special order the tiles, they would probably tell the homeowner, I'm going to have to special order them. I will call you when they come in and schedule. Okay. You know, when you do a special order, very often as a buyer, you can't back out. So if it's something custom, you can't back out of it. Whereas in that other case, the one that we read after Evertight, the Evertight wannabe, okay. What the company did was just, the homeowner called and said, I revoke my offer. And so at that point, they throw a few tools in the truck and they drive down and they say, Evertight. And the court says, no, okay. That was, you can't try to accept after it was properly revoked to begin with. And second of all, the circumstances were entirely different. Yeah.
I'm still kind of confused at how it makes it an option.
It's more, well, if the, I think I misspoke. I think it should have been, makes it a contract, but an option is a kind of contract. Okay. Does that make you more comfortable, Mr. Carlos? Okay. Lawyer in the making, getting very precise. Nailing the professor when she misspeaks. Yes! That's what I want to hear. Yes.
So if it is something that requires you to order supplies, is that part considered beginning of the performance?
Depends.
If it's a sort of a custom or
If it's custom and you could, yes, but the you have to be very careful about this because the first thing you want to consider is how people deal with each other, because that's what makes all of this change from one case to another. Normally, what you would do is you would call up the roofer and say, I want to revoke the offer, and the guy will say, but we already ordered those orange roofing tiles. But let me see if I can cancel it. If I can't cancel it, then you're going to have to go through with a contract or pay me damages. People would negotiate and talk to each other. Are people always reasonable, and do they always do that? No, sadly, that's why we need lawyers, right? Okay. In which case, the lawyer would call them up and say, "Look, okay, my client just doesn't have the money. Oh, why didn't he tell me that? Okay." I think I've got somebody else who can take the orange tile, but he's still going to need to pay me X. Then you call your client and say, well, you really should have told him earlier. So that's when you are, and you have when we did that negotiating exercise, that's when you start to get this understanding that you're serving as their intermediary, hopefully a person with a cool head who can talk with the other side and figure out what a reasonable compromise would be. Otherwise, if not, then you get to maybe make more money in a lawsuit, depending on, right. a lot of other things. Last thing you'd want to do. It's just like, I think surgeons love to operate, but that's sort of, if it was my body, that's the last thing I'd want to do. If I couldn't solve the problem any other way, then I'd go talking surgery. And same thing I think with lawyers. Lawsuits should be your very last option, not the first one for your clients. Because you want to keep them, the clients, I mean. Okay. Okay, more? That's it. There is no more. Okay. So are there questions on what you had just now? Yeah.
Will you be uploading this PowerPoint to Thanks, guys.
I also uploaded all the individual documents that were incorporated in here. They might be easier for you to read there. I think it would help you to go back over this and look at it slowly and carefully yourself, because what you want to do is figure out how to do this first, and then you're all going to be required to rewrite. Okay? There is no such thing as good writing. This is Ernest Hemingway. There's only good rewriting. And that's the truth, and that's where you learn the most. You don't learn from your successes. You learn from your failures. That's where the opportunity is to learn the most. And on the formative assessment, this is an opportunity to learn a lot. Was this an ideal hypothet? I don't think so, but it was something that you should have been capable of, because there really wasn't anything in there, any concept in there that was that hard. The tricky thing was that you hadn't really fully thought about Evertite and realized the role reversal. Most of you hadn't, or how that figured in, how that worked out, what happened, where that came from, what it did and when it did it, okay? And how to talk about it. So each time you figure out how to talk about something, how to write about it, you are stronger. It gives you more tools in your toolbox. And each time you write it out for yourself, your writing is getting stronger, immeasurably stronger. From this one assignment, learning how to organize one issue at a time, right? One little IRAC at a time. No brain dump rules, which none of you, I think maybe one or two did, and no IRAC. Always reminds me, I had this husky, and that was what my husky always said. One of the best dogs I ever had. But he couldn't do IRAC either. Ouch. No, you'll get it. And so that's what the TAs will be looking them over. What I want you to do is take the mess that you get back from me, look it over, and rewrite it. So study this ahead of time. I don't want you to copy mine, but think about what's in there so that you learn that material, then put it aside. I have a total of, let's see, about close to 75, 80 students in obligations, and I expect I'll have 80 different ways of writing the same thing correctly. Okay? How would I know this? I once had 87 legal writing students, and 40 in each section at Tulane, and I rewrote for each one of them their hypothet using their own language and putting it in proper form, and I ended up with 80 different versions of the same thing done correctly. Okay? You're all individuals. You will all do this in your own way, but it needs to have these elements so that you prove to the professor, to the examiner, I know this and you can't take it away from me. In a way, this subject is more difficult than some of the others you may be studying, and IRAC might be a bit more complex than it will be in others. But it's still the same thing. Whatever the professor is saying, he still wants IRAC. You just tweak it according to the specifics he's saying. Oh, I want you to start with a conclusion. Well, that works if it's a real simple thing and you can get to the end real fast. It's not going to work with something like this, which is more complicated, and you need time to think it through. So IRAC works better for this generally than CRAC. Okay. Some professors may want you to combine rule and analysis in one sentence. Fine. You start with a T-bar. It's your T-bar. You don't have to turn that in. It keeps you on the straight and narrow. It helps you think about all the details and put them in sequence so that you can make sure, however he wants it explained, that you have it in his format. Okay? Okay, so what I'll do now is turn off the recording and pass these out. You can take a look at yours, visit it for a while, shutter, and then give it back to me. Okay. And then we'll talk about it a bit more.